So here we are in 2018 and you're feeling more inspired than ever. Your favorite YouTuber is out there showing off that beautiful, buttery smooth, slow motion cinematic B-roll, so you went ahead and bought yourself a camera. Maybe a couple lenses, you even learned how to color grade, and perhaps you went as far as buying a fancy stabilizer to make your footage look more professional. Yet for some reason something still looks off about your footage and you can't seem to figure out why it doesn't look the same as your favorite YouTuber. Well, luckily I might have one of the answers to that, and that is why today we're going to be looking at how to strategically use frame rates to get better slow motion video.
First of all, I think everybody wrote the Raptors off and, gave us up for dead. But that locker room is full of fighters and scrappers and guys that are really getting into it now. Again, like I told them, it's a marathon, but I'm happy for those young men in there. I think our guys use that as motivation, use it as fuel to fight, to scrap. They did what they did for 82 games, and that was what was important.
"24 frames per second is what most filmmakers have agreed looks the most natural to the human eye. And if cinematic is what you're going for in your videos, then I recommend that you edit all of your projects on a 24p or 24 frames per second timeline or sequence. And keep in mind that for the rest of this video, everything I will be talking about is applicable to a 24p timeline. If you want to create slow motion video, then there are a whole bunch of frame rates out there that vary depending on what camera you're using and what part of the world you're from. But today we're going to be focusing on 3 of the most common frame rates, which are available on a lot of popular Canon, Sony, and Panasonic cameras. If you shoot your footage in 30 frames per second, you can slow this down to 80% of its original speed. On my Sony a6500, which I am using right now, 30 frames per second is available in 4K, so I use it quite frequently when I'm doing things like gimbal work and I want to smooth out any of those imperfections that you would otherwise see at full speed. Once you slow it down to 80%, it masks a lot of those little bumps or jitters, and I use this specifically when I don't want my footage to look noticeably slow. And on top of all of this, another perk of shooting in 30 frames per second is that you can use a lower shutter speed like 1/60, which means you can get cleaner video in low light situations. Shooting in 120 frames per second is, in my opinion, the best for handheld footage. Because you can slow this footage down to 20% of its original speed, you can smooth out any of the imperfections, shakes, or bumps that you would get when shooting handheld. This creates an extremely dramatic look, and it's what a lot of YouTubers use for their cinematic sequences and B-roll. However, keep in mind that if you're shooting in 120 frames per second, you have to now crank your shutter to 1/250, which is not ideal for low light situations. With the higher shutter speed, you're going to have to bump up your ISO, which introduces a lot of noise to your shot if you are shooting in those low light settings. In these situations, you're probably better off shooting in a frame rate like 60 frames per second, which lets you slow your footage down to 40% of its original speed. While not being quite as slow as 120 frames per second, you can still slow it down enough to get that dramatic look, and the benefit of this is that you can now use a shutter speed of only 1/125, which will make a significant improvement in low light situations, unlike that 1/250th shutter you have to use when shooting in 120 frames per second. I think that there's a big misconception around new filmmakers and content creators that you have to always shoot or edit with the highest frame rate available. And this just isn't true, and I hope that this video has helped you to see that. But if you did enjoy this video or found it helpful, make sure you hit it with a thumbs up, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!